Welcome back. In this video, we're gonna talk about the daily grind and how to keep yourself motivated. This is obviously a huge topic that people dedicate their entire lives to studying, but we're gonna go over just a few things that I think are some of the most relevant takeaway points when it comes to motivation for runners. Did you know that there was a time when the Red Cross used to pay people to donate blood? Now, I'm a regular blood donor, and there are times when I wish this was still the case because it would be nice to have a little extra pocket change while you're helping out a good cause. But a while ago, they decided to stop paying people who donate their blood, and it's actually for kind of a surprising reason. When they looked at the numbers, they found that when they didn't pay people to donate blood, the Red Cross actually got more blood donations. Now, to me, that sounded really counterintuitive, but as you delve deeper into this topic, it turns out that there's a lot of science in the psychological literature that supports this idea. When you pay someone to do something, it can have a negative effect on their motivation to do it. Now, this isn't always the case, and sometimes paying people is a better motivator, it just depends on the task. But the reason scientists believe that this happens with certain tasks has to do with what they call intrinsic motivation versus extrinsic motivation. It turns out people have known about this idea for a long time, they just haven't always called it by these sciencey names. In 1875, Mark Twain wrote a book called Tom Sawyer. In the book, he wrote about a young boy who was tasked with painting a fence one Saturday when he would rather have been fishing or swimming or running around town with his hooligan friends. Well, Tom, being a clever kid, decides to go about it in a very intelligent way. When his friends come by to make fun of him, he just pretends he likes the job. He appears fully engrossed in the artistry and craftsmanship it takes to paint the fence, so much so that his friends start asking if they can give it a try. He resists a little, and soon they're paying him money, toys, and whatever else they can think of in order to get a chance to do his job. So this is a prime example of motivation types. Tom was motivated extrinsically by his aunt to paint the fence. He didn't want to. He was doing it out of sense of duty or avoidance of the consequence that Aunt Sally had threatened. His motivation was coming from somewhere outside him, and interestingly, he never painted the fence. His friends, on the other hand, had an intrinsic motivation to paint the fence. They saw the beauty of the experience itself. They wanted to feel the satisfaction of doing the job because they appreciated the act of doing it. Interestingly, they ended up painting the fence. Now, the key takeaway we want to get out of this is that somehow Tom was able to express the beauty of the work itself to his friends, so much so that he facilitated intrinsic motivation in them to do the work. Now, the big question we should be asking ourselves is, can I do this to myself? How do I do that for running? How do I make this thing that's healthy for me also something that's enjoyable for me? Lucky for us, as mentioned before, there are scientists who have studied this for their whole lives. And one of the great things that we can take away from their research on this topic is called self-determination theory. Now, self-determination theory is basically the theory of what motivates people, and in particular, what motivates people intrinsically instead of extrinsically. In the smallest nutshell that I can possibly reduce it to, I'm gonna share 3 things from self-determination theory that can help you feel intrinsically motivated to run. Number 1, in order to be intrinsically motivated, you need to be autonomous. In a work setting, this could mean that you don't have a micromanager constantly telling you how to do something. There has to be a little bit of space available for you to think critically and to be creative with your work. With running, I hope that's the case. I've given you tools to try to apply, but it's your job to learn how to best apply them for yourself. I recommend exploring and experimenting with principles I've taught about form, and then really trying to make it your own. Take your autonomy seriously when it comes to running. Number 2, in order to be intrinsically motivated, you need to be competent at your task. For running, this means you need to pay attention to this course and learn everything you can about running, but it also means you need to practice. And we like to do things that we're good at, and unfortunately, it takes time to get good at running. So again, be sure to run at a level and at distances and on terrain that allow you to feel competent at it. Don't bite off more than you can chew when it comes to speed, distance, or any other aspect of running. Take it slow. But also take time to recognize the good things you're doing. This is where your journal can come into play again. It may be good to look over your journal from time to time and see the progress you've made. The slower the progress, the better, because it often means that that change is more lasting. I recommend you also use the journal to write down 3 things that you're good at when it comes to running. I would suggest doing this every day. Write down 3 things you did well as you ran and only 1 thing you want to improve on. This ratio helps keep your brain focused on the positive aspect of what you should be doing rather than what you shouldn't be doing. It reinforces what you should focus on continuing, but it also helps you appreciate how competent you are at running. Number 3, In order to be intrinsically motivated, it helps if a task is relational. And what that means is there are positive relationships associated with this task. When it comes to running, I highly recommend finding a running partner who is about at your same level who you can train with. You're way more likely to get out of bed in the morning to go run when you know there's someone waiting for you. It also can just make the experience more enjoyable. There's loads of reasons training partners are great, from everything to distracting you through the pain to having safety in numbers on a solitary mountain trail. But having a training partner isn't the only way to apply this concept. You could do something as simple as find someone who you like to talk to about running. Even just talking about it regularly with someone will help you fortify running as an aspect of your relationship. You can also find a local running community or a running club, sign up for a race, or join a running Facebook group. All of these things will give you a sense of community that will help you feel more motivated to run. So that's my summary of self-determination theory and how it can help you become more intrinsically motivated. But in order to make the hard choices, we don't want to just rely on motivation or willpower alone. And there's a story I want to share with you about this. For years, I was an excellent toothbrusher, but I was much less consistent at flossing my teeth. And I'm not gonna lie, I would rarely floss my teeth, maybe a few times a month, if that. I also have a permanent retainer on the bottom of my teeth, and it just made flossing feel like a real chore that I didn't ever have the willpower to do. Every 6 months when I would go to the dentist, I would promise that I was gonna floss my teeth every day. I would do it for a few days, and then I never got back to it. And the next thing you know, it's been 6 months and I haven't been flossing, and the dentist is asking me why. So several years ago, when I was coming home from the dentist, I stopped to think about why wasn't I flossing every day? And I came to the conclusion that when I would go home at night, I would get so tired and I'd be ready to go to bed that I would tell myself that I could floss tomorrow. Sleep seemed more important than flossing. And don't get me wrong, I'm actually a huge proponent of sleep and I'm willing to make sacrifices for my sleep. But as I thought about this, I realized that I didn't have to live this way. I didn't have to choose between sleep and flossing. If I made flossing a priority, then my schedule would naturally either shift back so that I would start getting ready for bed earlier, or I would realize that it doesn't actually take that long to floss. But the conclusion I came to was that I needed to develop a habit. Rain or shine, sleep deprivation or not, because I knew that if I made a habit, my schedule would naturally form better around that habit. So I told myself for the next 6 months, I would floss every day before I went to bed. It didn't matter how tired I was or how much I needed sleep. This time I had a plan for when I experienced resistance to avoid flossing for the sake of sleep. And most importantly, I had committed. I told a few close friends about my commitment, and I asked for them to follow up with me to help me stay accountable. Just as I expected, the first few days were horrendous. And I know that sounds silly, but I came home so tired, ready to brush my teeth and plop into my bed. But I had committed. And in those moments, I told myself, if I can do this at least for a week, at the end of the week, I can reevaluate. But what I found is that after a few days, it wasn't so hard. And after a few weeks, I hardly even thought about it anymore. It had become a part of my routine. I stopped waiting to the moment to decide if I was gonna floss my teeth or not. I had already decided, and I knew I was gonna do it. I stopped wasting mental energy and willpower on the decision, and that gave me the strength and the time to just do it. So there's a lot we can learn from a story like this. Number one, we need to make the decision ahead of time. We can't wait till the moment to decide whether or not we're gonna go running or get our workout in. That just wastes time, money, and willpower. Number two, the period of pain will pass. When you start a new habit, it can be really difficult to make changes in your schedule, your body, your mindset. It'll likely require some sheer force of willpower, but we have to remember that this period of difficulty won't last forever. For me, deciding to floss, it took a few weeks before it was just a regular part of my routine, and at that point, it was no longer something I even thought about. So if it's hard at first, remember that it'll get easier with time. Number three, include trusted friends. This is something that keeps coming up, but find someone who you can be accountable to on whether you're meeting your goals or not. Again, a running partner may be a great way to do this because they hold you accountable and they make it more fun. Number four, a realistic commitment to your goal probably includes thinking about what things are likely to get in the way of you accomplishing your goal. For me, it was sleep, and I'm gonna hazard a guess that this will actually be a very common one for you taking this course as well. And let me tell you, I'm an enormous proponent of sleep. I said that before, I'll say it again. But if you decide that you're gonna go run every weekday, regardless of how tired you are, I can tell you from experience that you will be amazed at how motivated you are to clean the dishes a little faster, watch a little less TV, spend less time scrolling through social media, because you know that you're committed. And you know when you're not using your time effectively, that's not coming out of your exercise time, it's coming out of your sleep time. It's just a little paradigm shift, but it can be a powerful motivator. Okay, so finishing up this video, I want to briefly talk about what other things might keep you from meeting your particular running goal. So the CDC has a list of 8 of the top reasons that people don't exercise, and I want to share that list with you. As we go through it, I want you to think if this applies to you and how you're going to deal with that particular issue as you try to solidify running as a habit for you. The first reason they brought up was lack of time. And let's be honest, most of us have jobs, we have family needs, loads of other commitments, we're way overscheduled. But let me tell you that if you have a lot on your plate, running isn't always adding another entree. Running can be the salt that goes on top that makes everything else taste a little better. If you do it right, running doesn't have to take up a lot of time. If time is going to be an issue for you, or even if you don't think it'll be, I really recommend trying to find a consistent time when you can go running. For me, going in the morning when I first wake up is the best time. You could also go run right when you get home from work or on your lunch break or 1,000 other times during the day, but I think having it be a part of a routine is something that helps a lot. It helps you make it a habit. If you think lack of time will be a potential excuse for you, stop the video and write down what you're gonna do to deal with that. The next reason people don't exercise is a lack of social support. Let's face it, if your spouse or friends are not aware or respectful of your exercise goals, they're gonna cut into that time. A solution may be as simple as having a conversation and telling your people about your exercise goals. You could talk about how you want to be there for them and how exercising regularly helps you be the best, most capable version of yourself. Regardless of who it is, it can be really helpful to have people who hold you accountable. So at the very least, I recommend asking someone to check in with you every once in a while. Again, a running partner is an amazing way to do this. If you think this will be one of your potential excuses, stop and write down what you're going to do when you have this thought and how you can prevent it. Another reason people don't exercise is because they have a lack of energy. Guys, this is a vicious cycle. When we don't stress our bodies regularly, we become weaker, and it becomes more and more difficult for us to get out and exercise. But the opposite is also true. When we exercise regularly, we become stronger, fitter, and we actually feel like we have more energy. So keep that in mind as you consider whether this will be an issue for you or not. If you think it will be, stop and write down what you're gonna do about it. Next, a huge reason people don't exercise is a lack of motivation. We chatted a little bit about self-determination theory, but can I recommend, if you think this will be an issue, you include in your plan of what you're going to do a reason why you want to run. Include your why. If your purpose isn't good enough, stop and change it. Add to it. Verbalize the essence of why you want this. Write it down. Getting a specific reason could be something that you call back on when it's difficult. If this potential excuse applies to you, stop the video and write down what you're gonna do about it. Another reason people don't exercise is because they're afraid of getting injured. That totally makes sense. When you exercise, you could strain a muscle, twist an ankle, but just remember that there's also a lot of risk in not exercising. In order to function best, your muscles need to move. Your bones need the stress and impact of movement to keep from going brittle. And your joints, like your knees, need the compression and release of regular movement in order to maintain meniscus health. So if you're nervous about exercising, there are easy things that you can do to make injury less likely. And I'm gonna talk about some of them in the next video, but if you're worried about a specific injury, I want you to think about what you could do to prevent it. If it's just injuries in general, here's a little tip. One of the best things you can do to prevent injury is to go slow. Build up to things. Don't bite off more than you can chew. And if you do get injured, remember that it's not the end of the world. Bodies heal. If you think this excuse might be an obstacle for you, stop and write down what you're gonna do about it. Next reason is lack of skill. I've tried to give you a foundation when it comes to running form, but remember the best way to get skill when it comes to running is to do it, practice, and it'll improve. If this is something that'll be an obstacle for you, stop and write down what you're gonna do about it. The last 2 reasons I'm gonna lump together because for running purposes, they're interrelated. They are the high cost and the lack of facility/weather conditions. So for runners, the only costs you should really be incurring at first are for shoes and clothes. They may be expensive compared to normal shoes, but consider that if you avoid 1 or 2 doctor appointments throughout your life because of your increased health through running, you may have just paid for the shoes through that. But then there's the question of a facility. Most of us can run outside, but let's think about if it's midwinter in Alaska or something and you can't make it work to go outside, you're gonna wanna make a plan for that. Don't let it stop you. The benefits of running are well worth finding a gym or an indoor track Worst case scenario, run in place at your house. But at the end of the day, I know you can find a way to overcome this. So if this applies to you, stop and write down what you're gonna do about it. So that was a lot. Let me summarize the action items from this video. Number 1, in your running journal, be sure to pay attention to the good. If you're able to write down 3 things that you're doing well and 1 thing that you want to improve on for each running session, I highly recommend doing that. Number 2, write down what your potential obstacles for staying motivated might be. What will keep you from acting? Then write down what you're gonna do when this happens. And if you can, write down what you're gonna do to prevent feeling that way in the first place. In the next video, I will be talking a little bit about injury recovery and prevention of injury in the first place. So when you're done with these tasks, I will see you there.